Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Conversations with Nicole show. I'm Nicole Huckabee. My guest today is author Jessica Stone. She's here to discuss her debut novel, Beauty and the Bittersweet, the first book in the A Thornbush and Juniper story series. With a background in journalism and a passion for fiction, Jessica shares how her personal journey and her relationship with her daughter inspired this powerful story of redemption, grace, and self discovery. I hope you enjoy this meaningful and inspirational conversation. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more insightful discussions. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Conversations with Nicole show. I am so excited to have as my guest today author Jessica Stone. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yes, this is quite the honor. I'm excited to share with my audience all about your debut novel. But before we get to that, tell my audience a little bit about yourself.
I am based in North Carolina. My husband and I moved back here because my parents are here and my mom was going through some health challenges. So we actually moved back in April of 2020, which was a crazy time to be moving states. We never even got to see our house before we bought it.
Gosh.
But we moved back and, it had changed a bit in the years I'd been gone, but I'm really glad to be here. My daughter is almost 27. She's a fashion designer in Paris. So I spend a lot of time over there, and that is the best place I can find to write new books. So that's really lovely.
What a great place to get to visit, with your daughter being there.
Oh, yes. All of the food and all of the people watching. And they all seem to have such more fascinating lives than me or anybody else I know in Clayton, North Carolina. So
Right, which makes a great
very,
background for writing.
exactly. I always say a rainy day in Paris is better than a sunny day in Clayton, so I'll take it. But that's what I do now. I am a novelist. I am an editor. I do audiobook narration, and I just keep myself busy.
That's exciting. And of course, you talked about your daughter being in Paris. That is inspiration for your book.
Very
It's
much.
called Beauty and the Bittersweet. Tell my audience about this amazing book. And it's going to be one of a series.
It is going to be one of a series. In 2012, survived something that I was not intended to survive. God intended it. The doctors never thought it was going to happen. And when I came out of that illness, which was kind of a long story, but I was in a coma for quite a while, I was really thinking about if I had passed away, if I hadn't survived it, my daughter, who was 14 at the time, all of the things that I would have just never gotten to share with her, not only like future experiences, but just things about my life that as a 14-year-old, she hadn't yet become privy to. And I'm a bit of a journaler, but not nearly as much as Catherine, the mother in the book, was. But in the story, a young woman who is 27, who is actually the age my daughter is now, never thought it would take me so long to get this book on shelves. But she has just lost her mother unexpectedly and finds her devotional journals. And in the story, Elle is going through a lot of personal challenges in her marriage, in her friendships, in her employment, in her job. That's the one thing that she's relying on, saying, like, this is the one piece of the puzzle that is not falling apart on me. And then something happens there as well. And so she has gotten over the guilt of reading her mother's diaries, which I've instructed my daughter to just burn mine. If anything happens to me, don't read that stuff. But she decides to read them, and everything that she learns about her mother and things that she just never realized her mother was going through help her to deal with the things that she is dealing with. So the story I did started in 2012, 2013, while I was recovering from all of my stuff. But life happens, and I set it to the side after just the first few chapters were written. I'd always wanted to be a novelist, but it's a little nerve wracking to put yourself out there for judgment like that. So I went in a different path. I actually started working in healthcare because I'd had such wonderful team of therapists helping me to recover. And so I decided to go to school for occupational therapy, and I was doing that when COVID hit. And so, we moved back, as I said, to help take care of my mother during that time. And because of what I'd gone through, I'm missing part of my left lung. So I was like, I really don't want
Wow.
to get COVID. I don't want to work in healthcare right now. So we came back and it took me like 5 minutes to unpack my entire house because I had nothing else to do and no people I could see other than my parents, like through the camera.
Yeah.
And I decided to pull that book out and just see if it was worth finishing. And I have to say, I was a little impressed with it. It was better than I remembered it being. And so I decided to finish it. And that was what happened 2020 through 2021. And then, of course, the publishing process is so lengthy.
Mm.
I did find an agent right away. My first agent that I pitched accepted the manuscript for representation.
That's a blessing. That was a
It
blessing.
was, it was,
Yeah.
it was a shock. And I honestly, I didn't realize that it was supposed to be hard.
Right.
Kind of like Elle in Legally Blonde. What, like it's hard?
Yeah.
I didn't know. So I pitched one and then I sat on my duff and just waited to hear back. Then a friend of mine said, I had to pitch like 200 before I got an offer. And I said, oh, maybe I should, be looking some more. And so I started to look, and within a couple of hours that same day, I gotten a message back from her saying that she wanted to represent it. So all of that to say that I finished that book and then started working on, it wasn't supposed to be a series, but several of the characters just kind of told me
They
that they wanted to
blossomed.
tell their side of the story. So the second book is sequential, and then 3 and 4 are other women whose stories intersect with book one. So it just turned into that and several other projects as well. But yes, that's a little bit about the book.
No, that sounds so exciting. I am really excited. I've read some of the excerpts from the book and it's incredible. I look forward to reading the entire book and seeing how you've drawn from your journey personally, looking at your daughter's life, and that relationship there had a lot to do with how this book evolved, correct?
Very much. We always say we're like the Gilmore Girls, and it's even not even us that say it; it's other people that say it. But I had my daughter at a young age, not 16 like Lorelai Gilmore did, but I had just turned 21 when she was born, and so we very much grew up together. And for most of her years growing up, I was a single mom, or it seemed I was a single mom. So we were just extraordinarily close. So this story, the mom and the daughter in this book, have a very close relationship as well, but something happens that Elle doesn't want to tell her mom about because who wants to admit that their mom was right about something and she's afraid her mom will say, I told you so, which the mother has never said. I've never
Yeah.
said as a mother,
I've never
well,
said
I
that,
might have said it,
but I probably
but
did. Yeah.
but I always say for my daughter, honestly, my daughter is well beyond her years, very mature, and I always say that she learned what not to do because of me. So I'm definitely not an I told you so kind of a mother. But their relationship is like that as well, and it really was kind of drawn and based on not only the friendship I have with my daughter, but as I grew up, the friendship I came to have with my own mother because I was a difficult teenager and we did not have a great few years there, but we have become so close. It's more of a love story between mothers and daughters than even
Yeah.
really between the husband and the wife.
I love that. It sounds like while it is fiction, there are so many life lessons in this book, and it's what you enjoy bringing to the table. Would that be a safe assumption?
I would say, and as I've read the reviews, so many people have said that, they really could relate with the characters because it reminded them of what they'd gone through, either losing their own mother or losing a parent or having a difficult relationship with a parent. And a lot of that was drawn from personal experience.
Do you feel that there was some sort of healing in your life? Because you have had a lot to happen in your life with sickness, with the challenges with your own mother, being a young mom at the time. I often feel when I read things that I find healing in them in stories like that, like you have written. Would you agree that that's something that others will find in that as well and was healing in some ways for you?
Definitely, because it is Christian fiction, and I really had to dig deep into my Bible to pull out what God wanted to tell through this story. It wasn't just about me. I have kept journals, as I mentioned, and so like some of the journal entries are actually based on things that I had gone through in my life before and scriptures that had helped me through. So pretty much all of the Bible references that are in there are things that the mother was using to help her because Elle's faith is not she was raised in the church, but she had fallen away. So, these are all things that kind of draw her back in and remind her of who God is. She's a bit of a control freak, which I have to say that was very easy for me to write because that's me. I had too many people that reminded me of that as they were reading the early versions. They're like, "Oh, she's based on you. She really doesn't like to let other people have their way." And so, really the big life lesson in this story is Elle learning that she's got to give up control. She doesn't have it anyway, and it's not doing anything but frustrating her to think that she can
Sure.
make things go the way she wants to make them go.
Isn't that what Christianity really is all about? We know ultimately we are not in control. And for those of us that are believers and have our faith in Jesus Christ, we know we do have to surrender, that we are not in control and that He is over our lives and He should guide and direct us.
And not only that, but just how much better his plan is. Like sometimes we see it right away. Like with this, I wasn't sure what I was going to be doing about podcast interviews, and we have a mutual friend that brought us together, and I thought, who would have ever guessed that my daughter being in theater with Renee's son all those years ago would have then led to this. But this is just one of those, you never know, God is always working on something behind the scenes. And I actually did a post on Instagram in the minutes that you were, I'm sure, waiting for me to log in.
Yes.
Got makeup on, blow dried my hair for like the first time in a week, moved my desk so you could see something besides just words on my thing. And in actuality, right before we hopped on, I had a very low blood sugar because I have diabetes. So I was sitting here chugging juice, having to reapply my lipstick. I had a cat on me that was getting black hair all over me. And I ran downstairs to tell my husband something that had just come up with our daughter. And we ended up getting to a yelling match. Like this was all in the 10 minutes before I logged on. And I'm thinking, we just want it to look like we've got it all together. Boy, that's never the case.
It is never the case. And I mean, I could give you a similar story before I joined you in our conversation. So I think it's real, it's raw, it's relatable, and you are using your life experiences and your relationship with the Lord to bring content to people that can enrich their lives, is what it sounds like to me.
I try, and honestly, it's such a relief. It's such a relief to let that go that we don't have to have it all together. And that's one of the things there's, this big, I wouldn't say it's big, it's a minor reoccurring theme throughout the book of Elle's relationship with her hair. So when I grow mine long, it's this big curly mess. And I go through everything to beat it straight. And she's kind of the same way. Like she's so tightly holding on to as much as she can because she endured something when she was a child. She was raised by a single mom because her father passed away when she was in elementary school. So there's a strong reason why she is the way she is, but she tries so hard to just control everything she can. And it's not till the end of the book that she's finally like, oh, kind of like my curls when I leave them loose.
Yeah.
And it's just this moment of you don't always have to have it all together. And that is
Right.
takes so much off of us that we were just never meant to carry.
Yes. What led you into wanting to be a Christian author? Because that's a leap of faith. Or was that something that you always felt that is the way that your writing would lead you? Did you ever think about just doing secular fiction, something that everyone could relate to? Or did you feel from the very beginning that Christian writing and publishing was where your heart was?
So the beginning for me was under 10 years old. I was so I was a Navy brat. So we moved constantly. Like I went to 15 schools in 13 years, kind of moving. And so I didn't really make friends. So, my friends were the characters in these books and I read all the time. And I discovered Christian fiction when I was a child and I loved it. But I also discovered every genre. Like I love spy novels and I love mysteries. And so honestly, I think growing up, I always assumed that I would grow up to be a mystery writer one day because
Ah,
that was my favorite thing to read. And I tried my first novel when I was in my 20s. I was actually a journalist for a Christian publication and decided I wanted to try writing a novel. And it was terrible. And I don't think that my writing style was horrible, but the story was terrible. And I didn't get very far with it anyway, but I was, kind of picking the brain of people that I knew, and they were all like, Jess, this might not be for you. And that wasn't a Christian story. That was a little romance, I think is what it was supposed to be. I don't
Right.
even want to, I'm trying to put it out of my head at this point, but
Got
it
to
was,
start somewhere, Jessica. You got to start somewhere.
no,
Don't beat yourself up.
at least it taught me I had a handle on writing a cute scene, which,
There you
that's,
go. There was a
I
lesson learned there,
there
right?
was some sort of a lesson there. But it was about 15 years later before this story even I didn't try anything in that 15 years. I was writing, but I was writing nonfiction. I was writing articles. I was, working as a journalist. I was every company I worked for, I somehow got put on their newsletter, starting their newsletter or on their newsletter staff. So it was a lot of stuff like that. But by the time I started this story, it was, as I said, right after I almost died. And I had such an interesting experience, which you can read about on my website if you haven't yet. But I was in a coma for quite some time, and I had a very clear out of body experience with a heavenly being as I watched angels and demons fighting over my body. And that might make me sound crazy, but I'll tell you, it was very real. It was very intense. And considering the fact that I lost consciousness, not in the room that I was in during all of this, but I had a very clear view of the exact space that I was in. And I woke up and I was in that space. I was like, there was something going on there. But it made me realize that whether I lived or died, they were not fighting over my physical body. They were fighting over my spirit.
Your soul.
So, that, and I have goosebumps now because I remember it just so clearly, but that really was a push for me to not only write the story, which doesn't have any elements like that in it. I love Frankie Peretti. I couldn't wait to introduce my daughter to this present darkness when she was old enough, but I'm not writing that sort of fiction. But it did make me think about just God being so interwoven in everything and how easy it is to get distracted by the world and to not realize that he's always here. He's always working. Nothing matters other than our spiritual life. So that's,
Yeah.
I think, where that story ended up
Yeah.
came to be and how it came to be the kind of story that it is.
Well, and you talk in your bio, and I've read about you a little bit more. That's the ultimate relationship. You're talking about your relationship with your daughter. You talked about your relationship with your mother. It's the relationship with our Heavenly Father that is the most important.
I'm trying to remember exactly how she phrased it. There was a review that someone said that her favorite line, the one that like hit her over the head, was that God isn't trying to make our lives on earth comfortable. He's trying to shape us for eternity with him. And something very similar to that, not word for word, but that's really just kind of everything we go through is to that end. So, everything can be used for good because it's all to that end.
Absolutely. I think it's refreshing to be reminded that we have options out there when it comes to reading and reading fiction and reading about stories that are faith based. And thank you for bringing that to us in such a special way. Elle's stories really going to be something I think that will resonate with people and that they will find relatable. And I'm sure that is your hope as well.
It is absolutely. I wanted to write something that was, even though it deals with tough topics, it's very hope filled and edifying and leaves you at the end happy that you fit.
Life is not easy. Life is full of challenges. It's all in how we approach it. It's all in how we react to it and see how we can grow from it. I know I say that, but then in the midst of it, I'm human. I forget that. But really, you're right. We're here to grow, to learn, to be in service to others, and for God to shape us and mold us and get us ready for eternity. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, I may talk a big game, but I tend to run away from the things I don't want to deal with. And for me, my way of running is to get hyper focused on work. And that is very much an L type thing too. And the first person who read that part and said, "Oh, are you talking about yourself here? Because this is you." And I was like, well, no, I wasn't talking about myself. Maybe you have a point. I do. I think that it's so easy to just think about how things are impacting us. And I'm trying, even with this story, to just, remind people that, as I said, God is always working on something.
Yeah.
So it's
And we're not
great to be
alone.
part
I
of it.
think that we're not alone. And that's the thing also. It feels like maybe this book will reveal to us we're not alone. We all have the things that we go through. And this is just the beginning of a series of books resulting from this. So talk about when we might see the next books come out. What's happening next for you?
So, during the process of writing all of this, my agent asked me a few times, would you write a romance? And I said, with my romantic history, I do not feel qualified to write a romance. My life has been a series of unfortunate events. I am happily married now, believe it or not, to my daughter's father, who we dated 27, 28 years ago. And then we broke up for 18 years. And when she was getting ready to move to Paris, she said she wanted to meet her father. And he and I got back together. And 2 years later, we ended up eloping in Vegas.
That is a
That's a
book
whole
right
other story.
there. That's a
That's
book right
that's what
there.
everybody keeps saying, right?
Yes.
It's a
Write
short
that one.
story on my website, but yes. So
That's precious.
that
That's
being
I
said,
love that.
I read romances and there are these, this does sound like a story, but I just never wanted to write romance. So she asked for a while and then an idea hit me. And it hit me so hard that I was like, I know exactly what the story is going to be. And so it's a romantic comedy because very different from Beauty and the Bittersweet, which doesn't have too many laughable, has much more cryable moments. But I decided to write this romantic comedy and I love it. It's honestly my favorite thing I've ever written. I don't know if I could do another, like I wasn't inspired to do a second one, but you just never know. So that one is actually headed out on submission pretty much now, any day now, if she hasn't already. And she loves that story as well. She was just thrilled when she read it. Book 2 in this series is almost done. Book 4 in this series is almost done. Book 3, I've started and stopped and restarted more times than I can count.
Oh my gosh.
But I really love what's going to happen with the rest of this series. So book 2 is sequential. It's based on her best friend's story. So her best friend in this book is going through some stuff of her own. And then book 3, so spoiler alert, the husband's been knocking boots with someone he has no business being with. So this story is set in around the music scene of Nashville, which is where that expression just came from, I think, because I've never used it to describe this story before. But so the third book is the woman that he was having the affair with. The fourth book is a music artist that comes into play right at the end of book 1. And she has an incredible story. She is honestly like my favorite character. She's my favorite storyline so far. It's an issue that's near and dear to my heart. She was raised in the foster care system and aged out of foster care. So that is her story. And that one it means a lot to me personally. But all 4 of these books deal with some sort of serious issue. So, and I'm not going to give them all away, but they're not super lighthearted, but they're all very hopeful stories. So
Sure.
then the romantic comedy, lots of fun, but it has some serious threads in it as well, things that are very appropriate for what our country is going through right now, especially. And that was not planned because I actually wrote this book like 2 years ago
How about that?
and then took it through some edits. And yeah, as I said, it's now headed out. And then I had a silly idea for a script, like a Hallmarky type movie based on something that happened to my daughter in real life last year. And we were kind of joking about it in February. And I said, oh, that would make a really funny movie. And I suggested it to a director that I'm friends with, and which is why I have to say it's because I'm friends with her. It's not, I suggested it to someone random. And she said, write the script. We'll shoot it this summer. So that turned into, and they're currently negotiating with Up TV for this
Yeah.
movie. So
Wow. That's
that was another
exciting.
little twist. It's a romantic comedy as well. I mean, of course, my agent was like, turn that into a book. And I was like, of course you want me to turn that into a book. But
Of
you never know
course.
what's going to happen there. So perhaps it will be a second book.
Yes. Well, that is so exciting. So much on the horizon for you. And I do want to bring it back that you say you're really not qualified to be a Christian writer, all the reasons that you wouldn't be qualified. Elaborate more on that.
Oh, goodness.
Because listening to you now, I don't think there's any reason in the world why you wouldn't be qualified to be a Christian author.
I, so I mentioned that my husband and I met a long time ago. So, had a baby out of wedlock. I am actually on my third marriage right now. The first was we shouldn't talk about it. It was awful. The second was just weird. We can talk about that off camera. You can get a laugh out of
Sure.
that one.
Yeah.
And then I ended up marrying my daughter's father. And so, I feel like my life does not show my values very well. I've got a messy backstory, and a lot of times I feel alone in that. And I think it's because, I follow a lot of Christian authors, and I see they're all high school sweethearts, married right out of high school, married right out of college. We've got 5 kids, and he's a pastor, and I'm a this, and I speak, and I lead women. And I would love if that was my story, but it's not
But
even
would you
close.
really be able to reach the people that need to hear your message, Jessica, if you were like all the other Christian authors? I firmly believe that what you've gone through has made you the person that you are today, that people know there is hope, and that nothing I could ever do would not make my God love me, would not make my God not give me the talents that He's given you to reach people. It is sad to me that you have ever felt you're not worthy of being a Christian author, because I feel the exact opposite. When I listen to you talk, when I listen to your story, you have lived it and gone through it and still believed and still pressed forward, and you still give Him the glory despite the challenges that you've been through. For all those reasons and more, you are a Christian author.
Thank you. I actually
Yes.
I posted a little video on social media a long time ago now. It's buried somewhere in my Instagram feed, but it's a book that says all the reasons I'm not qualified, and it literally like is a page of my sins. I was pretty open with it. But then the page flips and it says all the reasons I am qualified, and it just has grace written across. Grace, the end. And I try to remind myself of that. That hit me one day. I actually saw the template on Canva, and that was just what God spoke to my heart when I saw it. So I made that, I shared it. Didn't get a whole lot of interactions with it, but it is something that I remind myself of when I find myself comparing, because I do that a lot.
Well, we all do that. We all compare as much as we try not to do that. It's just a normal reaction. But when I listen to you, your life is much more relatable to mine. I mean, I've fallen short of the glory of the Lord. I'm in a second marriage. I've had things that have not worked out and been storybook, because really that's even the people that have, quote, the storybook lives, they've had challenges too. I think we just don't know about them, but we see ourselves as, oh, I'm so flawed, or I've made all these mistakes. But God says, I love you no matter, and all of our sins are forgiven. Believe in me, and He will take care of us. And so you have to keep speaking that so that people will find the hope and the grace that they need as well. You're such a vessel for all of us that feel so lonely and lost sometimes. So you give us hope through your messages.
I try and I say I like writing deeply flawed characters because I can relate to those. It's easy for me to come up with backstory that is messy because to me, that's just what my life has been like. But each of my characters, even as I said, the third book is the woman that he had the affair with. I've the reason I could write about infidelity as realistically as I could was because I've been on both sides of it. I've been on all 3 sides of it. I've been cheated on. I've been the woman cheated with. I've cheated myself. And she has a story that is probably aside from like the big piece of it, which is that she had an abortion, and I have never had to or thought about making that choice. But as far as what led her to be the kind of woman that would have an affair with a married man, I got you, girl. I know exactly what that's like. So I could come up with her character and the way that she behaves in this book. She's not who I am now, thank God. But
Right.
boy, I was a Martine at one point in my life.
But you learn from that and you move past it, and your story would give someone else hope that has been in your shoes, has gone through your shoes, to say, yeah, I made some really messy mistakes. I'm flawed, but you're also saved by the grace of God, and He loves us no matter what. Since we've had every day we sin and we don't even know it. So none of us is perfect, but He's used those flaws to bring creativity out in you in ways that really will help others to find Him. And that's your
I
ultimate
really hope
goal
so.
for your readers, your followers, your audience to find a relationship with Christ.
I really hope so. And I hope that, people who hear this is Christian fiction, it doesn't dissuade them from wanting to read it if that's not typically something that they would read or if they're not a believer yet, because this story is really just about Elle she learns through the whole book. She's not saved at the beginning. And it's a story that I think, I'm not putting it out there to have anybody change their mind or change their beliefs, but just to realize that God loves them.
Yeah, yeah. God loves us. Amen. And He made you, He made me. So He gave us purpose. And sometimes we have to go through the messy stuff to find out our purpose so that we can use that to help others and serve others through Him, because He gives us the gifts. He gave you the gift of writing. He gave you that gift of the love of reading when you were a little
Mm.
girl. He gave you such a wonderful gift, and you're using it in such a special way. So that will be blessed, and people will read it and they'll receive it in whatever way it's received to them. But it will have meaning when people read it. There will be something that they take away from it. And you know what? That's the part, the control part you can't worry about. You just have to put it out there, right?
That's exactly right. I always say we're responsible for obedience, God's responsible for the results.
Yes, that's great. That's great. Well, Jessica, we could talk forever. Your story is amazing. Thank you for what you shared with me today. I know that your books are just going to be at the top of the bestseller list.
It's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Books a Million, which I know there aren't a whole lot of those still around, but they still have an online platform. I've seen it on some indie bookshop, bookshop.org. And the reason I like them is because they actually take part of their proceeds to support independent bookstores.
Oh,
So
how wonderful.
I literally Googled it last night. And I was like, I don't even know half these places that are selling my book, but I'm happy for it. They had reviews on sites that I didn't even realize that it was being
That's
sold on.
great.
So definitely you can Google, but the easiest for most people, of course, is going to be Amazon, and it's on Kindle. And I am, as soon as I can take a breath, going to be recording the audiobook version myself as well, since I do
Yeah.
those as well. And everything that links to it is on jessicastonestories.com. So that's an easy way to just find all the links as well.
Yeah, it's great to go on your website and really just take your time in reading your story and everything, because I really did enjoy that. You've got some photos there of your family, some things that will help people to have a better understanding of who you are. And of course, then from there they can see how to purchase the book, and they can follow you on all of your social media platforms. As we close, any final thoughts that you would like to share with my audience?
I would just say, I hope that you'll think about this story when it comes to the mothers and or the daughters in your life. Like I'm happy to have it out there in as many hands as possible. But I would say, if that is something that you struggle with, is wanting to hold tightly to all of the things that, all these balls that we're constantly juggling, and, just thinking that it's up to us to keep things going. Who I can tell you that God is going to do what God is going to do. It won't matter how
Yeah.
tightly you're trying to hold anything. If this is something that I can talk to you about or pray for you about, then I am always available, and you can reach me through
Yeah.
my website.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful, Jessica. Thank you so much.
Well,
Good
you're
luck,
very
my
welcome.
friend.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And that will do it for this edition of the Conversations with Nicole show. Until I see you again, I hope you have a great day.